Okay, I guess we should start now, yeah? It is already time. Okay, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh and a very good afternoon. I bid to Encik Aminuddin bin Abu Bakar, Deputy Director of IPG Datuk Razali Ismail Campus, Dr. Rosli bin Abdul Rahman, IPG Campus Dr. Razali Ismail Prospen Coordinator, Dr. Azlinda Abdul Aziz, Head of Department of Languages, Dr. FAIZAH binti JAAFAR, our presenter for today's webinar, Head of Departments, fellow lecturers, teachers, beloved students and all webinar participants. I would like to give a warm welcome to everyone who managed to spend some time with us this afternoon. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar. I'm SUHANA AHMAD and I'm a lecturer at the Department of Languages in IPG Datuk Razali Ismail Campus, Kuala Negeri, Terengganu. First of all, we would like to extend our gratitude to IPG KDRI Prospan for giving us this opportunity and a platform for sharing. Alhamdulillah. Today, we are presenting Self-Study, Principles and Approaches, a webinar that will be presented by Dr. FAIZAH binti JAAFAR. Just a little housekeeping before we get started. If you have any questions during the presentation, please type them into the question box in your Zoom control panel. I'll bring them up during the question and answer session at the end. Also, we will provide the attendance link in the Zoom chat box and it will be recorded in the SPL KPM system. Okay, now we will turn the time over to Dr. FAIZAH binti JAAFAR. Our presenter today is the Deputy Head of Department of Languages in IPG Datuk Razali Ismail Campus. Dr. FAIZAH has been a lecturer in IPG KDRI since year 2005. She has 10 years experience of teaching in secondary schools in Terengganu. She graduated from the University of Nebraska, Lincoln, Nebraska, United States of America in the year 1990 in Bachelor of Arts with Honors. She received her diploma in education from the International Islamic University Malaysia, or well known as IIUM, in the year 1992. Later, in the year 1999, she completed her Master of Education degree from University Technology Mara Shah Alam. And Alhamdulillah, she completed her PhD studies in the year 2020 last year, also from University Technology Mara Shah Alam. So that's a little bit of background information of our presenter today. Okay, now without further ado, I would like to invite Dr. FAIZAH binti JAAFAR to deliver her sharing session. Please welcome Dr. FAIZAH.
Okay, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh, and a very good afternoon to all of you. Okay, thank you very much to Madam Moderator, Madam SUHANA binti AHMAD. Okay, and again, Assalamualaikum and good afternoon. I bid to the Deputy Director of IPG Datuk Razali Ismail, Encik Aminuddin Abu Bakar, Head of Departments and other lecturers, okay, who might be from other campuses as well, teachers and also students, okay. First of all, I would like to convey my special thanks to Prospan Eastern Zone, specifically to Dr. ROSLI Rahman for giving me this opportunity to share some information on self-study. And to others, thank you for joining us this afternoon. Okay, let me share. Okay. Okay, can you see the screen? My PowerPoint. Yeah. Hello.
Is this the second slide, Dr. FAIZAH?
Okay, yeah. This is the second one. It's okay. For the first one, I think it's okay already, because for this afternoon, I'm going to share with you about the topic on the self-study and also the principles and approaches of how to do self-study research. Okay, and actually, to some of you, you might not be familiar with this research genre. Okay, actually, in education, self-study is not a new genre for research. Okay, and actually, this study has been conducted by teacher educators since 1990s. Okay, so it has been 30 years already for this kind of research. Okay. And did you know that prior to 1970s, okay, according to Finnegan and Hamilton, 2009, only a few authors concentrated on the practices of teaching. Okay, I mean that the research done, only a few authors concentrated on the practices of teaching. Okay, scholarly research on education was dominated by psychology with other disciplines such as philosophy, history, sociology, and also anthropology. Okay, so in the late 1970s, okay, in the late 1970s, almost all of the research published in the field of teacher education revolved around effective teaching and experimental or quasi-experimental research designs in teacher education. Okay, in fact, the research on teacher education classrooms were conducted by researchers outside of educational field. So it is kind of weird, right? So persons who doesn't involve in educational field did research which is related to education. Okay. So those research actually intended to discover the most efficient strategies for teacher educators and prospective teachers to use in the classroom. Okay. The research in teacher education actually began when the teacher educators, those involved in education, those teacher educators, those lecturers teaching student teachers felt discomfort with the fact that their voices as teacher educators were not heard. So they cannot voice their ideas. They wanted their voices to be heard. Therefore, in 1990s, teacher educators began studying their own teaching and relating the findings with teacher development. Okay, and then in 1992, a group of self-study of teacher education practices, okay, ASTAP, was formed in American Education Research Association, or it is known as ERA, A-E-R-A. So what I can say is that this type of research began in the United States. Okay, after 6 years, ASTAP became the largest special interest group in ERA. So more people or more teacher educators started to do research in educational field. Okay, what we can say here is that self-study actually started to become a formalized method in 1992. So it's a long time ago, about 30 years already, but then maybe we are still not familiar in Malaysia. We are not still familiar with this form of or this type of research. Okay, so self-study as a research genre, and as you know that there are so many genres of research. So one of them is self-study. Okay, other than case study, other than quantitative study, right? So self-study is one of the genre. Okay, are we aware that teacher educators are encouraged to do reflections? Yes, I'm sure that all of us here, specifically in those in IPG KDRI, were aware that we need to do some reflections, right? And as IPG lecturers, we all need to reflect our own teaching. So after teaching that, we need to fill in the form, right? We need to fill in the 0302. We need to reflect on our teaching, right? And then maybe in writing our reflections, okay, or in doing our reflections, we might look at the students' performance. We might look at the students' performance. Okay, how they perform, what did what did they do, and is it supposed to be done, or they did what they're supposed to be done in the classroom? Is it based on, or do they really follow what we say? Or maybe we can also reflect on our own teaching. Okay, we also can reflect on our own teaching. Are we satisfied with the our own teaching for that particular day? Do what happened in our class, right? Do we think that what we deliver to the students are really understood by them? Okay, there has been consistent calls for teacher educators to reflect and pay attention to their own teaching. So Lothran and Barry stated that in 2003 that there has been consistent calls for teacher educators to reflect and pay attention to their own teaching. So teacher educators, so all of us here, okay, all of us here need to be reflective practitioners. Every time that we need, after teaching, that we need to reflect. We need to reflect, okay? And focusing on our own teaching better informs, focusing on our own practice actually better informs our own teaching. So we need to look at our own practice, what we did in classroom, right? So it better informs our own teaching, whether, well, is that effective teaching? Is that a good teaching? Do our students really get what we taught? Okay. And therefore, students learning about teaching can be enhanced. So when we better inform of our own teaching, our own practice, then we can do something, and then students learning about teaching can be enhanced. So actually here we are talking about ourselves as teacher educators, and students learning here, students here focusing on the pre-service teachers, or what we can say that student teachers, our student teachers, okay, in IPG maybe generally, okay. So as teacher educators, we prepare our students, teachers to teach. And we actually learning how to, they actually learning how to teach, because when we're teaching, actually we give them the best practices. We taught them of how to teach this, of how to teach that. We provide them the methodology, the best methodology, the best pedagogy, right? And we taught them the best teaching practices. But the question is, do we really implement whatever that we taught them? Okay, and then Guilfoyle notes the significance of walking our talk, and Straight Matter 1995 and Lothra 1996 stress on the importance of practicing what we preach, because we are actually the role models for the students. Okay, we need to practice what we preach. Then researching our practice better informs us about our own teaching. Again, when we research our practice of how we teach, of whether we are practicing, or we walk our talk, or we practice what we teach, actually inform us about our own teaching. So we need to do some research on that. So Lothran and Barry 2003 notes about formalizing research on teaching. So reflection, when we write reflection alone in our 0302 form is not enough, actually. So we need to formalizing our research on teaching without illustrating the evidence that informs approaches to practice, without pushing the boundaries of language, of knowledge of teaching and learning about teaching. Change is not likely to be enacted beyond the individuals. Therefore, as teacher educators, we need to conduct a research which focus on our own practice. It is important for us to conduct a self-study research. So I think for the time being, I think is you have a clear picture of the research about this research. Okay, so I keep on mentioning about self-study. What is self-study? Self-study is one of a practitioner researchers. Okay, and same as we are familiar with another one that is action research. That is also a practitioner researchers. Okay, so self-study and also with action research is or are the practitioner researchers. Self-study is a form of practitioner research that was created to fill a space in the research gap for teacher educators. Okay, this is stated by St. Gregory, 2009. So it is form of practitioner research for teacher educators. Okay, for us in IPG. Okay, and it is also known as teacher research or teacher inquiry. Okay, we teacher research or teacher inquiry, we inquire our own practice. Okay, it is the relationship between self and the context of work. It will between self, our own self, and also the context of work, our own work as teacher educator. Okay, and self-study actually enables the researchers to solve practical problems. So we maybe have any problem in practice and make progress in their own teaching. So when we know that we have problem in practice, in our practice, then we need to do something with that. Action need to be taken. Okay. Okay, self-study. Okay, the researcher actually in self-study, the researcher actually studies or his or her role within the practice. In self-study, if we are the researcher, we study our own role. Okay, we study our practice in the classroom. Okay, as the teacher educators. Okay, and this type of study also focuses on himself or herself, or we are talking about the researcher focus on himself or herself. So if you are talking about me, I myself, so I concentrate or I focus on myself, my own practice. So emphasize on the I. So I am the owner of the research. Okay, so that's the reason why in writing our self-study report, we can use I instead of the researcher. We use I, the first person point of view in writing our report. Okay, and self-study challenges teacher educators to examine their practices with new eyes so that their understandings of teaching and learning about teaching become more meaningful and applicable in their own practice. So when we did self-study, when we get the result or the findings already, then we can look at our practice with a new eye. So if we think that, okay, our practice is not that effective, so maybe we can change it. So it will be our teaching become more meaningful. Okay, it will help the students, our students better, and it is applicable in their own practice. I mean, the other teacher educators too, other than our own practice, when you share with other lecturers, other teacher educators, so it will be applicable with their own practice too. Okay. So this study also involves the process of self-improvement of teaching pedagogy. So we know that we study about ourselves, we study about our practice, then it involves the process of self-improvement. We try to improve ourselves. We try to improve our teaching. We try to improve the methods that we use. We try to improve the teaching pedagogy. Okay, and then when try to improve everything, we try to be better teacher educators with better teaching pedagogy, with better practice, then the results in an enhancement of student teaching. So when we conduct a self-study, we understand what and how we teach, as well as how to improve our own teaching practice, and therefore it will enhance student learning. Okay. So self-study, teacher educators need to place their teaching under the microscope to help keep teaching from becoming rot. Okay, so actually for this self-study, we need to always conduct self-study research so that our teaching won't be becoming rot. Rot means, what is rot? If in our language is the same thing, we are referring to the same thing, we are using the same method, we never care about our students learning. Okay, self-study is often conducted by teachers to inform their knowledge about teaching. For example, if we wish to implement student-centered approach in teaching language, we can find out how we implement SCA in the classroom, so the student-centered approach in the classroom, by doing self-study research. Do we really, the question here is that we preach the students, we tell the students, our students, that they need to conduct a student-centered approach. They need to implement student-centered approach in their classroom. But we, as the teacher educators, do we really implement that? So do we really practice our preach? Okay, through self-study, teacher educators can evaluate their practices, understand their teaching better, and change their practice to the needs of the students. Okay, the self-study research conducted will inform us whether we actually implement, for example, SCA just now, in teaching. If the finding of the research told us that we did not really implement an SCA in teaching, okay, we need to take necessary actions to change our practice. Actually, if we don't really do the self-study, okay, if you don't really look at our practice, sometimes we don't realize that actually we don't really walk our talk. We don't really practice what we preach. Okay. We need to take necessary action, okay, and so that our students, we really understand SCA. Means that if we find out, that our teaching, okay, the approach that we implement in classroom is not student-centered approach, we really need to change our approach so that our students will really understand SCA, and they should have learned SCA through experience. They need to learn SCA through experience. They are actually, for the student-centered approach, they cannot really learn. We cannot really give them the theory without making them learn through their experience. Okay. Okay, the purpose of self-study. There are three purposes of conducting self-study. Number one is personal development. Number two, professional development. And also number three, program development. Okay. So what is personal? Why is the purpose of the self-study? For personal development. So we know that as teacher educators, we need to be reflective practitioner. Okay. Teacher educators will need to always reflect our own teaching, right? Broadwick 2016 stated that self-study research involves personal reflection. So for self-study research, of course, you need to do self-reflection is very, very important. Okay, San Gregory, 2009, stated that reflection is an important part of teaching process. Reflection is an important part of teaching process. Why? Because what more important is that the student really learn. The student really learn what they're supposed to learn. Because our client here is the student teachers. They need to learn of how to teach in the classroom later on. They become a teacher. So we need to reflect. So we need to reflect our own practice so that it can affect the student learning. Okay, Lutheran 2007 stated that teacher educators who pay attention to their own experience and trust learning through researching the experiences will help them to better understand how to approach teaching. So when we have that, when we did that, later we know of how to approach teaching in order to enhance students' learning. Okay, and teacher educators who reflect on their teachings and conduct self-study research will find answers about their own teaching, will make change if they need to change their practice or reaffirm the action they had already taken in their teaching. If they think that, yeah, okay, my practice is already fine, my students already understand, this is good already, and then my student teachers, they can apply it in the classroom when teaching. So it can reaffirm our actions, our practice in the classroom, okay? And teacher educators who critically reflect on their practice strive to make sense of their teaching and participate consciously and creatively in their growth and development. So if we keep on do critical reflection on our practice, actually we can contribute to the personal development as a teacher educators. Okay, and also for the professional development, okay, the key word here is sharing is caring. Okay, sharing is caring. The first one, the personal development, that the key word is reflection. For the professional development, sharing is caring. Okay, actually, not all or not everybody likes to share their experiences with others, especially their bad experiences. For example, if you do the self-study and then you find out that what you did in the classroom was not effective, or the teaching method or the strategies that you implement in the classroom was not a successful one, was not a good one, okay, the class turned out to be haywire, then it is not bad actually to share. It's also good actually to share our difficulties and struggles of the situations or the actions and the approaches to teaching with colleagues. Okay, it is not bad. It is good. Even though it is not a good thing, it is a bad thing, but it's good to share our experiences with our colleagues. Okay, share experiences through stories, which can quickly capture the essence of the situation, episode, or event, and illustrate it to their colleagues and others. Okay, so when we share in the form of a story, okay, we can share the experiences in the form of a story. We tell them a story of our experiences. We okay, I have a very bad experience, for example, in carrying out drama activities in the classroom. So the class, what I did was that I found that my students really didn't know of how to carry out the drama activities with their students later on when you observe them. So it give you the your colleague the essence of the situation and also the event, okay. And then sharing a good story can be a way of reconstructing a teaching and learning situation. A good story and also a bad story can be a way of reconstructing a teaching and learning situation. So when we share the story, so we construct a teaching and learning situation. Okay, maybe we get a feedback from our colleagues. Okay, we construct the teaching and learning situation. We get a new way. We will look at the new eyes. Okay, it can provide others with important necessary information necessary to teach. Thus, the colleagues might be able to implement a similar approach in the classroom when necessary. So if we share the good story with our colleague, for example, so that could be the important information, okay, that they later on can share with their students in the classroom. For example, we use the drama activities, right? Drama activities, role play. You find that the teacher really like that. The teacher, I mean the student teacher, our student teacher really like that, and they know of how to do it. It can improve their motivation. It can improve their confidence level, so that maybe you can share with your colleagues, and then that might be the colleagues might be able to implement a similar approach in the classroom. Okay. Teacher educators who work together, share ideas, issues, and concerns, help their colleagues and friends to see beyond their own worldview. Okay, when we share our findings, when we share our findings, our result, then our old friends, colleagues, and friends actually can see, beyond their own worldviews. They have new ideas to broaden their perspective on situation in meaningful way. For example, if I share with my students that I think I found that my students, they cannot really use Reader's Theatre correctly in the classroom. That because of my own practice. When I taught them, I didn't really give them the proper instructions. Okay, that is my fault there. Okay, because I already reflect my practice there. So I found that when the students try to use the Reader's Theatre in the classroom, her own class become total haywire. So maybe they can this can give my colleague the new eyes or the view, and to broaden the situation perspective on situation and in meaningful ways. Maybe later your colleague will say that, Kenan, I need to be very careful with my instructions. I need to give a very good instructions, very good, so that they will follow directly. Okay, they know of what are the flaws in your practice, that they try to avoid the flaws. Okay, then try to teach in a very meaningful way to the students. Okay, so the feedback received from colleagues will generate new ideas and enhance their performance. The colleague and friends can get the ideas from the research in order to improve their own practice. So what we share with our colleague, they get the ideas and they can improve their own practice. That's the reasons why we need to share our findings with our colleagues. Okay, and program development. Okay, for program development, the keyword here is strengthening teacher education program. Okay, self-study. Self-study actually help teacher educators to improve their study by being the reflective practitioners. Okay, we become the reflective practitioners. We always reflect our own practice, and actually it become a model for teacher candidates of the importance of reflective practice. So we should tell our students that our student teachers that they need to always reflect their own practice. Okay, and then teacher educators look into their practice with new eyes. Okay, their understandings of teaching become okay. So another one, self-study provides other teacher educators with examples of pedagogical practices that are efficacious in educating teacher candidates. So when we share our experience, so we share the pedagogy, our own practice, the pedagogy practices. So whether it is good or bad, or in this case, it's maybe a good one, the good pedagogical practice, which are effective in educating a teacher candidates. So this will strengthen teacher education program. And also it can help teacher educators to know what they are doing is making a difference in preparing teachers for diversity. So when we share also with other teacher educators will know that what they are doing in making what they are doing by doing the self-study, it will make a difference in preparing teachers for diversity. Okay. So methodology of self-study. Okay. According to Labowski, 2007, there are 5 elements to self-study. Okay, 5 elements to self-study. Okay. The first one, the research should be self-initiated or self-focused. Okay, and the researcher should have personal interest in the research. Okay, this one, for this one, the first one, okay, first you need to ask who is doing the research and who is being studied. So the answer is I, the researcher. Okay, in this case is the teacher educator, right? Teacher educator as a researcher. So they are doing the self-study. This research actually should focus on ourselves, the researcher, the teacher educators, or focus on I and not on anybody else. We are focusing on ourselves and not on the students. Okay. When we conduct self-study research, it's because we want to, and we are not forced by anybody else. So it is self-initiated. So self-initiated because we want to. We are not forced by anybody else. Okay. And then, and researchers should have personal interest in the research. Okay. And then we need to be really interested in our topic or in our research. That's why we cannot just follow whatever others ask you to do. So it needs to be self-initiated and it needs to be self-focused, focused on ourselves. Okay. So number 2, okay, the element second element is self-study should focus on the improvement of practice. The research should look to improve the professional practice of the researcher. Okay, so the key definition of self-study, the study of one's practice in order to improve. That is the key definition of self-study. So it doesn't matter actually if the results of the research show that our practice did not comply with the requirement of the MOE. Okay, the research, because what we concern more is that after that we try to improve our practice later on. So if we don't do self-study, if we don't do research on ourselves, our own practice, that we don't know. So the key word here is that we try to do or to look at our practice and try to improve later on. So it doesn't matter if the result of the study show that our practice did not comply. Actually, we are maybe a bit failure in the classroom, fail to implement the correct methods, the correct pedagogy, maybe the correct strategies. Okay, so actually, because we are in the process of improving our own practice or teaching, so we have to remember that we are not a perfect human beings. Okay, we are not a perfect human beings, and then we are assessing our own practice actually, and we want to see whether we really practice what we preach, we really walk our talk. So if we know that, if we can see that, so that later on we can change our practice. Okay, so if we find out later that we actually just preach, but we never practice what we preach, we just talk but we never walk our talk, then only we need to do something with our practice. Okay, so another elements of self-study is that it is interactive. The research should involve active dialogue with others and the context of the problem. So interactive means that we cannot do this research alone. We need to interact with others, our own students, maybe the research participants, as well as our colleagues and friends. Okay, we need to interact with our research participants, because they are the one who provide us the data. Okay, the data. So, and then number 4, it has multiple methods, but is mostly qualitative. So self-study is a qualitative research. Okay, self-study research includes a reflection, interviews, journaling, but can also include quantitative data to support your research. Okay, therefore, with those methods, it will provide opportunities for us to gain different and more comprehensive perspective. So, in collecting data for this research, we must follow the data collection method for qualitative study. Okay, data collection for qualitative study. We need to observe, we need to do the interviews, we need to analyze certain documents, such as reflective journals, okay? And then, of course, reflections is very, very important. So we need to write reflections all the time. And then after that, that is how we collect the data, okay? And then, for this type of research, our own reflective journals is very important, as that would give us awesome data on our practice. Okay. And then number 5, okay, elements number 5 is exemplar-based validation. Exemplar-based validation. Craig 2009 shared 5 qualities of narrative exemplars that are in self-studies. Okay, 5 qualities of narrative exemplars that are in self-study. Exemplar-based validation. Okay, since self-study is using variety of methods, so self-study practices should utilize the guidelines for trustworthiness recommended by scholars, okay, to validate. Okay, number 1, for example, triangulation, member check, peer examination, inter-raters agreement, audit trail. Audit trail means that you have to provide a very comprehensive stories, okay, narrative about our our journey, for example, about our practice, about this, about our practice, our observation, our teaching, okay? And then it also needs to be long-term observation. These are the basic one for the qualitative research, right? Okay. The 5 qualitative of a narrative research exemplars written by or given by Craig 2009 just now. Okay, and number 1, it describing the persons and their knowledge growth. So the persons here are those involved in the research. Those involved in the research, for example, the our own self. So we need to really describe in detail, okay? And also the participants, and also the background and the knowledge about the study. Okay, so we need to describe that narrative. In narrative, we need to tell stories actually. Okay, and then also number 2, taking place within a social context. For this particular studies, we need to have contact with others. For example, we cannot do this study alone. Okay, even though we are actually looking at our own practice, but we need to look at others too. For example, to our students who are student teachers who provide us with the data. Okay, with the data. Okay, number 3, engaging others in teaching and learning through the telling of stories. Okay. Narrative. For the narrative, actually we tell, in order to share with our students or our colleagues, we need to tell stories. Of what we did, how we did everything. Okay. And then telling the stories of our situations, telling the stories of difficulties, sharing with them the findings, and also get feedbacks from them. Okay. And then number 4 is implicating identities as the 4th quality of narrative exemplars. Okay. Means that for this one is that we need to convey the identities indirectly. Identities of our maybe research participants, our student teachers, we cannot reveal who they are. Okay, of course, that is for the ethics, right? And then number 5, knowledge and meaning should be constructed. The persons involved in this study should construct knowledge. What do we learn from this? So for us, the one who did the research, so we need to know. We need to get something from this. What do we learn from our practice? So we learn that our practice is not effective. The strategies that we use are not effective. So we need to do something with that. We need to change. We need to maybe improve our practice. Okay. And also, our own colleagues, when we share with our own colleague, they also need to construct the meaning, something. They need to construct the knowledge from our sharing. So some of you might ask, okay, what is the difference between self-study and also action research? Because both of them are practitioner research. Okay, actually, there is a discussion that self-study is a form of action research. Okay, if we compare action research and self-study, there are lots of similarities. Okay, both may be a qualitative research. Okay, and then both looking at the performance of our students. Okay, but actually, self-study is similar to action research, but there are also differences. Okay, the use of narrative and reflections are key components of self-study. Even though in action research there are also reflections, but it is not as the same as reflection in the self-study. Okay, for the self-study, the key word here is the refer to the study of teacher education by practitioners. Okay, teacher educators themselves. Teacher educators themselves, emphasizing feedback from students as a serious attempt to understand one's teaching with a view of improving it. So the key word here is that to understand one's teaching. To understand one teaching means that we are looking at ourselves. Okay, we are looking at ourselves, our own practice. Okay, but action research is a kind of collective, self-reflective inquiry. Self-reflective inquiry. So for the action research undertaken by participants in social relationship with one another in order to improve some condition or situation which they are involved. So for this self-study, actually we are focusing on ourselves. We are focusing when we reflect ourselves, we reflect on what we teach, how we teach, and what make we choose that for example for that strategy, okay, and how we teach it. We need to write it in reflect it in very detail. But for action research, actually we do reflection, but then we focus the focus might be to improve the condition or the situation with which they are involved. For example, in action research, maybe we focus, we reflect, but then we look at the performance of the students. We look at the condition. We look at the situation. Maybe we look at our intervention, the tools that we use, and how it affects our students. But then for self-study, we look at ourselves. Okay, the key word is ourselves. It is believed that an improved understanding of the practice and also a change of practice can lead to improvement in terms of our teaching later on. So when we know that, okay, we look at ourselves, we focus on ourselves, we know the flaws, then we try to change the practice. But action research is used for the purpose of solving immediate specific problem in the classroom. So we know that our students, okay, they don't really perform. Okay, maybe we can change the way, or we can change the improvise the intervention. Okay, improvise the intervention, and then but for the and then improvise the intervention so that the students really improve, okay, perform better in their learning. Okay, for the self-study, cycles of critical reflection on practice to discover and produce knowledge of that practice. So we want to get the ideas, we want to get the knowledge of our own practice. Okay, but for action research, interlink actions and reflections through action reflection cycle of planning, acting, observing, and reflecting. We plan, we act, we observe, and we reflect. And then the cycle go on to the next cycle of replanning, acting, observing, and reflecting. Okay, so it is kind of for action research. It could be a very the time used is not that long, but then the reflection we need to follow the cycle. We need to follow the cycle. But for the self-study, the knowledge that contribute to the practice of the researcher becomes evidence in reframe thinking in practice and a transformation of practice. Okay, so with that, I thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Dr. Faizah, for, I think it's a very comprehensive sharing about self-study. Okay, so we have listened to the definition of self-study, some history of self-study, as well as the purposes, and we even come to the part where highlighted on the differences between action research and self-study. Okay, it is very interesting that we have question from Dr. Sakia. Okay, the first question was about the elements that set apart self-study from action research? I believe this part has been answered by Dr. FAIZAH. Then the second question is that another perspective of action research is improving own practice, like us improving our own teaching, not for students' sake, but for our sake. So could this be regarded as self-study? Perhaps you could answer that one, Dr. Faizah.
Okay. Actually, for the self-study, the focus is on our own, on ourselves, right? And then action research, the focus is on the students, right? So self-study, actually, we actually can do action research, action research, but at the same time, we can do actually 2-in-1. But then it is quite tiring, or maybe quite comprehensive. So we can focus both. We can focus both actually. Both one, we reflect ourselves on our own teaching, and we reflect on our students' performance, right? We reflect on our students' performance. So we look at our students' performance, and then maybe at the same time we can compare it with what we did in the classroom in teaching them, okay, and our own practice, so that maybe while we teach or while we'll give the instructions to the students, actually our own instructions is not clear enough. Our own instructions is not clear enough. So when we did self-study, actually we can see that, because the reflection that we did is very clear. That's why I said that the reflection is very, very important. And it is very, very important that you write the reflections in detail, because we might forget of what we had done in the classroom, right, in teaching. So maybe our own instruction actually that make them poor performance, right? It's not because of the intervention. It's not because of themselves, but our own instructions. Okay, so actually I believe that we can actually combine, but then it's quite hectic lah. Okay, quite hectic, because it is very detailed, whereby observation both, but you must remember that for this self-study, the focus actually is for us. Okay, focus in our own practice. Yes, Dr. Sa, self-study could be a subset for AR. Could be. But then, as I said before, that is quite tiring to focus both. But it could be a subset for AR too, right? Because like I said before, that self-study, there are similarities, but also there are differences, right? Differences in both. Similarities and differences. So it could be a subset for that.
I can see that there Dr. Sakia is saying that could be model is the thing that sets self-study and reflection apart. Maybe Dr. Sa would like to explain more a bit on this, because I don't really get the meaning here, if Dr. Sa is on the line.
Yeah, thank you, Deso. It's just about this, because I find it interesting, because Kak Jah, I know that you've been doing self-study, but we have not had any opportunity to have this academic discourse. But this opportunity really helped me see what self-study is. So, can I say that between self-study and action research, one of the differences is that in action research, we have that model. Either we use, Lewins, or we use McNeef. But in self-study, we don't have that model. How do we go about doing self-study then?
Actually, we just follow the qualitative research, and then it depends on we look at the because this is part of the qualitative research, right? So the model or the way we do it, it follows the qualitative research. We don't really have the model. I don't find any model for this one. It's not maybe because I don't find it, or they have it but I don't find it. But then for the time being, I don't find any model for this one. I'm so sorry to say that. I have to be frank with you, Dr. Sa.
No, this is very interesting because can I say that I don't know. I've been thinking new and very interesting, and I think most of us are doing it. It's just that we don't know it is self-study. Can we say that when we engage ourselves in any innovation, that is also a form of self-study?
Okay, self-study, you must remember that the key word is you focus on yourself. Whether you do it, you do the innovation or whatever, means that you look at your practice. You look at your practice. If you focus on your practice, whether your practice, whatever that you deliver to the students, whatever you teach to the students, and then you focus on yourself, you focus on your practice, that is self-study. Okay? Do I answer your question,
thank you.
So focus, the key word is,
thank you.
Yeah, the key word is that the focus is on yourself, your practice. So whether you want to find to improve your practice, if you find that your practice is not that good, so I found that my students are like this, so I need to do something with my practice. I need to change the practice. Or maybe if you find that your students are good already, then I am satisfied with my teaching, so you just carry on with that. Okay, you just carry on with that. So that is self-study. So the key word is self. The key word is self. You focus on yourself, because we need to remember that we are just human beings. Sometimes we are what we say that kita become so kita panggil what is it that we koya. The Malay word is koya. Kita what is the word to use? Means that kita I cannot find the word, sorry. I cannot find the words, but then kita rasa we are too good. We are too good. We are too good that, okay, we are good. We are maybe good. We are our students like our teaching, but then we don't really see the flaws actually in our own teaching, in our practice, which sometimes when we find that students cannot do this, students cannot do that, we do not put the blame on the students. Sometimes we need to look at ourselves. It may be because of our practice, because of the instructions that we give to the students are not clear. Maybe that whatever that the pedagogy that we use to the students with the students in the classroom are not interesting enough. Okay, or maybe whatever that we did to students are not applicable or not good for the students. Okay.
Okay, Dr. Faizah, I think this results from lack of reflection, right, in the teaching and learning process itself.
Yes.
Okay.
Sometimes when we reflect, sometimes we just look at the students' performance, but we never look at ourselves. Right? We never look at ourselves, what we did with the students. Sometimes there is the flaw there. Okay, there is the flaw there. Okay, let me share the experience, my own experience. Okay. I did drama activities with my students. Okay, this is based on my research. Okay, I did drama activities with my students. Okay, and then I taught them readers theatre. My students, I did readers theatre with my pre-service TEFL teachers. Okay, and I hope that when they go for their practicum, they will use it, because I think readers theatre is quite interesting. And then I found that well, it can help through literature. Readers theatre can help the students to improve their reading skills. So I really taught my students, okay, you need to use this. You need to use readers theatre in the classroom with your students when you go for your practicum. Okay, but then when I observe my research participants, they did use, even though I never asked them, it is not compulsory for them to use readers theatre in the classroom, but they did use a readers theatre in the classroom. But it found out that the class becomes so messy. The students really the class becomes so noisy. The teachers cannot control the class, and etc. So I ask the students to reflect. Okay, I asked the students to reflect their teaching, and she said that, okay, I don't know, ma, I don't know what, madam, I think that British theatre is good already, but then I don't know what happened to my students. They never listen to me, blah blah blah. And then when I look at the practice, my students' practice, I went back to my reflection. I went back to my reflection. I look, I read, and I analyze my reflection in teaching readers theatre to the students. Now I realize it's my practice that actually affect my students, how my students conducted readers theatre in the class. When I taught them readers theatre, what I did was 20 students in the classroom. I just divided into 2 groups. So I find the script from the internet online. Then I give it to them. And then in that script, that particular script, there are 14 characters. Sorry, 14 or 10 or more characters lah. 10 or more characters. So 2 groups. So 10. So what they did in the classroom, I mean my student teachers, they did the classroom. They are good already. They're good. They can implement, or they can conduct readers theatre in the classroom. Okay, good. I am very satisfied with them. Okay, I'm very satisfied with them. But actually, the way, when I look at the way I conduct with them, okay, there's a flaw there. Means that I actually take my students for granted. My TESOL students for granted means that I just give them the script and they rehearse among them. So they just give the script, the dialogue, or the roles among them. So they are able to present. Why? Because they are TESOL students. They are TESOL students. They have nothing. They have no problem with the language. They are able to do that. Okay, but my students, my student teachers, they cannot carry out in the classroom because their students are primary school students who are weak in the classroom. So when I deliver the instructions to the students, when I taught my student teachers of how to use readers theatre, I never thought of this. I never thought that, okay, that the students will follow. They learn from the experience. They don't really remember of what I told them. Okay, when you go to school, you cannot do this. Okay, so you cannot, you need to make sure that you use the dialogue or the script that has less characters, so that they are able to work in a small group. They can discuss. They can understand it better. It's easier for you to control. But actually, my student teachers, actually, they just follow through whatever that I give them, whatever that I taught them. So that is the flow. My own, my own practice, the flow in my own practice that make my students do not know, carry or conducting readers theatre badly in the classroom. So I really feel bad. I really feel really bad when I look at the what happened in my class, my students' classroom when I observe them. So I feel, oh, okay, this is the flaw. So that's the reason I say that self-study is very important, because we don't really remember of what we did in the classroom. It passed already, right? Sometimes when we go out of the classroom, we don't remember of what we did with the classroom, with the students already, right? Maybe last week, last 2 weeks, last month, we didn't remember already, right? But then when we write our reflections, when we explain in our reflection of what happened in the classroom through our observation, then we know that, okay, this is something that we need to take action. We cannot take our students for granted. So if we, let's say, if we need to teach our students, okay, we want them to teach it correctly, then we need to teach it correctly first. Okay, how to carry out the strategies. Another example is that if we want to our students to implement student-centered approach, we need to use student-centered approach in teaching them so that they learn from their experience. It's not that they learn the theory, but they never have the experience of conducting or implementing the real student-centered approach in the classroom. That's about it. Okay.
I guess that is one of the precious findings that you have obtained from your
Yes.
self-study
Yes.
research,
And
right,
also
Dr. Faizah?
we need to admit the flaws. We need to admit our mistakes. Okay, we cannot just say okay. We need to accept the blame. We need to accept the blame. It's not that every blame need to go to the students. No, sometimes we need to accept the blame. But then sometimes we don't see this if we don't carry out self-study, right?
Yeah, without the introspective being done, we would never be able to see what we have been doing in our teaching session all this while, right?
Yes.
So I guess that one has answered Miss Fatin Suryati's question here, asking about your experience in collecting the data. Okay, you have even shared about the finding as well just now. Okay, maybe I should read this one question from Dr. Azlinda. What are the challenges you face during self-study? How do you overcome it?
The challenges are that, especially for this one, you need to really detail out everything. You really need to detail out everything about your practice, the teaching. You cannot miss out anything. So if you miss that, if especially the important part, okay, if you miss that, so you miss that, you will find that sometimes you get a good result. You get a good result, right? You get a good result, and then you cannot find the flaws in your teaching. So kita jadi macam, okay, we feel like we are good lecturers, we're good, become a very good teacher educators, okay, but we wonder what happened to our students when they be in class, right? Be in class when they're teaching. Why are they doing like this, right? Why are they doing like this? Okay, but then in doing self-study also, actually, I found that some of my students, they have in the beginning when I asked them to write reflection, okay, other than me writing the reflection, my teaching reflection, and I asked my students also to reflect of about their learning, okay, reflect about their learning. In the beginning, some of them feel that, oh, I don't think I like this one. I don't think I can use role play in the classroom because my students, especially we are in Terengganu, right? Our students are they have the belief that the students are weak. They are not able to do or carry out a role play in the classroom. They are very weak. So I don't want to use this. I don't want to use this. I will use other strategies, better strategies, maybe game or song. Okay, they don't really challenge the students. Okay, they don't really challenge because they have the belief that the students, in the first place, the students cannot do this because it's very, very difficult because of their language proficiency. So that is a challenge that I ask, that I get, right? Okay, one of them. So I feel like, okay, you don't want to use it, so you know.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I guess that are all the questions that we have today. Okay. Dr. Sa is saying here self-study begins with reflective thinking. Okay.
Yeah.
So it starts with I again. Okay.
Yes.
And we have a comment here from Dr. Zainab. I had someone who did a study in reflective practices, but it was not called self-study. Okay, maybe it is similar. Dr. Faizah, is a study in reflective practices.
Yeah, it could be similar, maybe because self-study is also called like what I shared just now. It also called as teacher's inquiry, right? So you inquire something about yourself, right? So you try to get the. But then the thing is that for this one is you need to reflect. Reflection is very, very important in doing self-study. Without reflection, you cannot do self-study, right? Same as action research, right? You need to reflect, but then we focus is different. You don't focus on yourself when we do action research. We maybe focus on the students' performance, because what we want to solve there is the students, right? Students' problem, right? For example, a student's problem in using grammar items in the classroom, maybe articles, right? So you use, the focus is on students, but then for self-study, the focus is on us. Who do the practice? Who practice? Who taught them? Who taught in the classroom? So we need to really look at how we give the instructions to the students, okay, our student teachers, how we deliver what we did, maybe. So we need to, that's the reason I said that it's very, we need to make it very clear. That is why one of the validity for the for this research is that audit trail, right? Thick description of what happened, right?
Yes, I guess that is very important, because a self-study, it's about stories, right? Descriptions of what happened, so that we get the data from them and we can do the reflection from there. So it looks like we have covered all of our questions, okay, for today. Maybe, and we have like 10 more minutes before we end the session. Dr. Faizah, maybe you would like to say a few words of encouragement to many of us who are still pursuing our studies before we wrap up.
Well, actually, for this, it's good that those who are still learning, still doing research, maybe one day you can not for the PhD, maybe for your own study, but then for your own practice, for your own practice, then it's better. One day maybe you can embark on this type of research. Okay, embark on this type of research. It is very interesting, but then of course, for the qualitative research, you need to collect lots of data, and then you will get lots of data, very rich data. Okay, very rich data. Okay, and then so I really hope that all of us here can do or conduct this type of research in order to learn about our own practice, and we can approve it for the sake of our own student teachers, so that they can when we teach them effectively, so then they can become effective teachers in the classroom later on. Okay, so try to get the ideas of our own teaching in the classroom. It is good actually, and then it will really open our eyes of what we did in the classroom. So because sometimes we feel like we are good enough, even though at the end of the semester maybe we get, when the student rate us, we get very good rating from the students, but actually we need to do something. We need to look at our own practice too. Okay, so so I really hope that for this research, I really hope that you already have an idea. This session has given you some insight about self-study, and I really hope that some of us are interested to do self-study, conduct self-study research in the classroom, okay, with our students, with our own students. Okay.
Yeah, okay. Thank you very much, Dr. Faizah, for all the sharing. Okay, in today's session, I guess all of us have benefited from this session a lot. Okay, this is one research methodology that we can use in our study. Okay, perhaps our students who might be doing thesis and their own research soon. Okay. Might be interested to apply this method, okay, in their research soon, okay, and perhaps for other teachers and lecturers as well who have not tried yet this technique. Okay, so I guess that is all from us today. Again, I would like to thank our speaker, our presenter for today, Dr. Faizah binti Jaafar, for all the information shared with us. May Allah bless you. Okay. And also, I would like to thank you, all the participants who have been with us today, who have been very attentive. Okay, let's see whom we have got here. Okay, we have our director here, Dr. Hajah Narita. Thank you very much for joining us this afternoon. Okay, and also our Deputy Director, Encik Aminuddin. And thank you again to our organizer, okay, led by Dr. Rosli bin Abdul Rahman, Kadri Pospan, and last but not least, thank you to all participants who have spent some time for today's webinar. Okay, insyaAllah, we'll be meeting again everyone soon in the next series of Prospan webinar. Okay, we'll be looking for more interesting, more beneficial sharing and content from other lecturers in all IPGs in Malaysia. So from me, I would like to apologize if there is any lacking, okay, in any parts throughout this webinar. Okay, that's all from me. Thank you very much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Have a good day, everyone. Assalamualaikum.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much for listening. Okay.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, Dr.
Bye.
Faizah.
You're
Thank you so
welcome.
much.
Hello. Habis chat.